Case 2, Safe House Mouse, by Clean Little Secret. The house stood alone, white walls and curtained windows, small gardens and low fencing. As she crossed the porch to knock, Dorothy mentally recited her greeting, and when the door opened, she slipped on her best spy's smile. "Good afternoon. Sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for..." A hitch caught her voice. She still knew this woman's face. The braided pinned one side of her short hair back, and her cool eyes widened in a faint mirror of Dorothy's own expression. But now an apron covered the front of her clothes and flour dusted her hands. "Angie?" dropped from her mouth. Dorothy caught herself, her mind adapting as she stepped forward to plant a shoe on the threshold. "You're Angie, right? My work partner back from Albion?" She had puffed her natural reaction into an act, but it was easy to fake her smile. Even though Angie had irritated her at times, they had known each other as children, and it was nice to see a familiar face in this distant land. The woman's mouth formed a slight curve. "Hello, Dorothy. It's been a while." 10 whole years. Dorothy's teeth strained against her grin. "I can't believe I'm seeing you again like this. And in Casablanca of all places." Angie's head tilted to look past her. "You must have had a long walk from the city." Her gaze returned to Dorothy's face. "Why don't you come inside for a little while? It's cooler in here." Was this a trap? A way for Angie to confide and question her? That sounds great. It's hotter than hell out here, and I'm dying for a drink. Dorothy followed Anne's retreat inside, where the aroma of freshly baked bread greeted her, along with a voice calling, "Alice? Who's here?" Another woman entered from what must have been the kitchen, and Dorothy gasped. There stood the Kingdom of Albion's princess, with her hair tied in a bun, her sleeve rolled up to her elbows, and an apron similar to Angie's over her dress. "Princess?" The woman flinched, bunching 2 handfuls of apron into her fingers, but her smile stayed. "Pardon me, what did you say? Aren't you Princess Charlotte of Albion?" she offered courteously. "My name is Dorothy, and I was with Angie at that Queen's Mayfair party 10 years ago." Blinking, the princess relaxed her shoulders. "Oh yes, I recognize you now. I'm no princess here though, so please call me Charlotte." She released the apron to clasp her hands together. "Well, any friends of Angie's is welcome to this house. Would you like to have some tea?" "To be honest, I would love some wine right now." "I'm sorry, but we don't have any alcohol here at the moment. I'll prepare the tea. Angie, why don't you stay in here with your friend and catch up?" Charlotte disappeared into the kitchen, so Dorothy and Angie were left alone, silent as the decade of separation between them. Dorothy moved first, turning her head to consider her surroundings. The house had broken its promise of being cooler than the field outside. Its darkness did provide some relief, but the closed window walled in the heat and made the room an extension of the oven. A couch, an armchair, and a low coffee table huddled together on one side, and a wall-mounted shelf circled the living room at eye level. She stepped closer to examine the shelf's content. A few books were stacked in seemingly random places, and 2 seashells that sat together, no doubt native of the nearby ocean, encircled by a black ribbon. "Nice place you have here, Alice. We don't want the locals to learn our real name." Angie took off her apron, folded it, and set it on the table's end. She didn't appear armed, and judging from her earlier reaction, she hadn't been expecting Dorothy's visit. But there never had been any telling with her. "Would you like to sit?" "Sure." Dorothy eased her way to the armchair to ensure it wasn't trapped, so Angie took a seat on the couch. That unexpected little smile still perched on Angie's lip, and Dorothy couldn't find any tension in her posture. "What are you doing here in Casablanca?" "Vacationing." Dorothy leaned back, stretching her legs as she let her eyes wander towards the ceiling. "I came here to see the sights and escape Albion for a while. But then I heard about these 2 sisters who lived a little ways from town and made the best bread in the region, so I just had to come buy some." She flicked her gaze down to Angie. "What about you and the princess? Why are you in Casablanca?" Angie held the stare, but her eyes narrowing slightly in response. A metallic whistle interrupted, and just as they both glanced towards the kitchen, Charlotte entered with a loaded tray and a quick "excuse me." After setting the tray on the table, she began pouring 3 cups of tea. "How long will you be in Casablanca, Miss Dorothy?" "Just a few days at most. Staying in one place for long can be dangerous to a spy, even one who has left the profession." "I see. Here." Charlotte offered a cup, and Dorothy accepted it with a muttered thank you. It felt odd to be served tea by the princess, even if she had given up her status years ago. but Angie was quick to draw her attention back to the topic on hand. You quit? Dorothy gave her a look. Resigned is a nicer term. When Angie's expression didn't change, she sighed. But yes, I did. I wanted to try something different with my life. I've been working as a spy since I was a teenager after all, so I needed to find another occupation before my hair started graying permanently. Oh, she couldn't read the look on Angie's eye. They appeared blank, but thoughts must have been whirring behind them, weighing everything she said and did. How much did Angie believe? Miss Dorothy, you haven't tried your tea yet, Charlotte said. Is something wrong with it? No, nothing's wrong, Princess. Dorothy raised the cup to her lip, but she couldn't drink it. Her presence threatened them, and she couldn't put it past Angie to have her poisoned to protect their secret. Charlotte's innocent smile made her even more insecurable than Angie, and her personality had never matched Dorothy's expectation. She leaned forward to extend a hand, and Dorothy gave it a brief stare before Charlotte said, May I borrow your cup for a second? Ah, of course. Charlotte poured some of the tea into her own cup and returned it to Dorothy. After taking a drink, she smiled. Does that make you feel better? Her instinct said that she couldn't trust the display, but Angie looked unconcerned as she sipped from her own cup, so Dorothy forced herself to relax. The fact that Charlotte saw through her so clearly could be troublesome, but she ignored the thought as she tried the tea. It was good, hot and strong, some kind tasting like home, but when a bright ring of Angie's left hand caught her eye, she choked and almost spat the drink back into their cup. They both stared at her as she swallowed and sputtered, Angie, are you married? No, we told the locals our husbands are attending to an important business matters overseas, and we live together to help each other out. Charlotte raised her hand to show the ring she wore. We did that so no one would mess with us or try to court us. But we don't have much to worry about anyways. Most of the people here are scared of Angie, so they don't bother us much except to buy bread from us. So it's part of your cover, Dorothy said, while Angie gave Charlotte a sideways look, as they whispered to each other, I'm not scary. The day we arrived, you almost broke a drunk man's arm because he tried to speak to me. He called you honey. I wasn't going to let that go any further. Dorothy furrowed her brow and sipped her tea. Why was it hard to imagine Angie having a husband? Of course, it's another of her lies, but somehow she didn't seem the type for marriage. So what were you two talking about before I came in? Charlotte looked to Angie for an answer, but Dorothy said, Well, I just asked Angie why you two are here instead of in London. Ah, she shrugged. Charlotte's eyes fixed on a point past Dorothy. I'm afraid it's not too interesting of a story. We simply left the kingdom, Angie and I, to come to Casablanca. She already had this house ready for us, so we've been living here ever since. Dorothy couldn't help glance at Angie when her name was spoken. The explanation had given her more questions than answers. How did Angie have time and resources to prepare this house beforehand? How long had she been planning to run away? How could she look Dorothy in the eye that last day before knowing what she was going to do? Miss Dorothy, do you mind telling us what happened in Albaran before we left? Left. Dorothy's grip on her cup tightened, but her face stayed pleasantly neutral. What's there to tell? It's basically international news now. We don't hear much out here, and what does reaches us might not be reliable, Charlotte said. It's different when you're in the middle of everything. They were avoiding her questions again, redirecting their conversation to the information they wanted. Dorothy would have to work to get her answers. Well, there's nothing good. Both sides of the wall panicked when you went missing. Control didn't want more people to learn about your involvement with spies than was necessary, so I spent months working alone to find any leads on you. News of your disappearance couldn't be suppressed forever, so when the kingdom blamed it on the Commonwealth, the higher-ups in our country fought back, and everything fell apart. I see, Charlotte muttered. Angie's eye flickered towards her and returned her cup to the tray. She took Charlotte's hand. Charlotte responded by shifting closer and leaning against Angie's side. Oh, this was a fine time for them to start feeling guilty. Trying to calm herself, Dorothy finished her tea and set the cup on the table. Blood pounded inside her head, but she couldn't let this front drop yet. Anyways, I'm out of all that now. This trip is my first real vacation in years, so all I have to worry about is the weather and my wallet. Angie's cold eyes caught her. When did Control give you this mission? Dorothy blinked. A drop of sweat escaped her hair to roll down the side of her jaw, the heat getting to her at last. and she wiped it with the back of her knuckles as she said, "I told you, I quit that work a while back. Control wouldn't let you leave them alive. You would be a security threat to the Commonwealth." Angie sat up straighter, and Charlotte moved from her side to watch Dorothy with her head tilted. Dorothy pressed her lips into a line. Sweat damped her back where it met the seat, trapped her hair against her scalp. But this question won't go away, so she blew a long exhale from her nose. "Alright, Angie. The truth is, I took advantage of the mess in Albaran to disappear while Control was focused on other matters. You're not the only person who knows how to leave the country." Angie let go of Charlotte's hand and leaned forward to act as a wall between her and Dorothy. "Then why did you come to our house? You're a fugitive, not a vacationer." "It was a coincidence. How did you find us? And who else knows you're here?" "I wasn't looking for it." "Don't say it was an accident. The world is too big for you to stumble across us this far from Albaran. Nothing about this would have been a coincidence." Dorothy scowled. She wouldn't make any progress at this rate, so it's time for a direct approach. Her rack dropped to let all her feelings towards Angie and Charlotte show on her face. "Fine then. You want the whole truth? I was searching for you two, and I came to this house knowing that there was a good chance I would find you here. I revisited some leads I first got 10 years ago and pursued them further. But I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, and no one made me come here. Then why did you want to find us?" "Because I had to know." Catching herself, she dropped her voice and gaze. Her eyes strung, but she was stronger than this. Time hadn't broken her composure yet. After steadying herself, she met Angie's stare again. "I don't understand why you two left the country when you must have known this would have happened. All I wanted to know is what your reason was, but you've both refused to answer me since I walked in through that door." "It was my idea," Angie said. "I was the one who arranged everything." "But why?" Dorothy leaned forward. "What could have caused you both to leave Albaran? Why would you abandon your position, your country, everyone you knew? Why did you leave?" Charlotte raised her chin, and her voice was firm as she said, "Because to go back to the Black Lizard planet," Angie said. Dorothy bolted to her feet, forcing them both to look up at her. "Like hell you're going to give me that!" "Albaran is stuck in a civil war, Angie. A decade of struggle and work went up in flames because the princess disappeared, and no one could explain it. People have died because of what you did." She stepped forward, her glare burning at them, and she found herself looking in the barrel of a revolver. The movement had taken a single breath, slipping a hand behind the couch cushion, pulling the gun and aiming it at Dorothy. Angie must have been prepared for this. All warmth and softness had fled her face, leaving behind a blank expression Dorothy recognized. But her body still looked relaxed. This was the girl Dorothy had known, the spy she had worked with. "Angie!" Charlotte said. Dorothy didn't look away. She refused to raise her hand like a common criminal being arrested. A gun of her own was hidden within her dress, but she knew better than to reach for it now. Angie's aim was too good, her reflexes too quick. She'd been trained not to point a gun at someone unless she was ready to shoot them. "Go outside, Dorothy. I don't want to get your blood inside our house." Charlotte didn't protest again. Her face had become unreadable, her lips pressed into a line, and her eyes dark. When Angie stood to open the door and let Dorothy onto the porch, Charlotte followed. Outside, she drifted over to lean against the side rail and gaze at the garden as she pulled her hair down and combed it with her fingers. A breeze crossed Dorothy's face and slipped a tang of salt water into her mouth. The field, nothing but grass and dirt road, spread as far as she could see. No one would hear the gunshot or find the body. She stopped at the porch's edge, Angie's presence heavy behind her. "I know you don't trust me, Angie, but I swear Control didn't send me here. I know. You wouldn't have gotten this upset with us if this was a mission someone had given you." Dorothy suppressed the long breath slipping between her teeth. She wasn't safe yet. "Then what are you going to do?" When no answer came, she slowly turned around. Angie's expression was still neutral, but sweat glinted on the side of her cheek. She had changed. The spy Dorothy had known wouldn't have hesitated to pull the trigger and protect her own interests. How long had she been living like a rat in her hole? What could have been worth this? Charlotte's sigh rippled through the quiet and drew a flick of Angie's eye. "We really made something good of ourselves here." She left the rail to draw close to Angie and touch her shoulder. "Angie?" The tenderness in her voice didn't fit the standoff. Angie didn't look away, but she leaned in when Charlotte raised a hand to whisper in her ear. It seemed this intimacy between them made Dorothy's eye widen. Her stare went to the ring on their finger. Leave it to Angie to hide the truth inside a lie. You two, she hesitated. The idea strung together multiple details she had noticed that day. Cast their relationship in a light in that sense, but she couldn't be sure. The simultaneous look they gave her pushed her to speak. Did you two marry each other? They both blinked. Charlotte raised her hand to her mouth, but didn't hide her giggle, as they shared a glance before she dropped an arm around Angie's waist. Well, you could say we eloped, her voice dropped. After all, the wall would have always come between us in London, no matter what we did, and my political responsibilities would have trapped me one day. But how? Dorothy's eyes furrowed. You disappeared less than a day after meeting each other. How on earth? Charlotte beamed as she leaned her head to Angie's shoulder. If Dorothy didn't know any better, she would have called that expression a spy's smile. We knew the second we saw each other that we were kindred spirit. Once you find something like that, you can't ever truly go back to the way things were. Okay. She had her answer then. Even if she couldn't say she understood it all. Had this information been worth standing at the end of a loaded gun? Taking a slow breath, she looked at Andrew and tried to drop every bit of pretense. Dorothy had to be genuine now. That's all I wanted, Angie. I won't bother you ever again, and I won't tell anyone about this. You have my word. Angie's grip tightened on her revolver, but Charlotte hummed. We should go, Angie. It's hot out here, and the bread in the oven will start burning soon. After a few long, bitter seconds, Angie lowered the gun, a slow breath leaving her mouth with emotion. Dorothy, leave. I don't want to see you here again. Everything Dorothy had known of Angie's personality, her ruthlessness, had told her Angie would shoot her. Charlotte must have caught the question in her eye, for she donned that mystery smile again. Angie isn't what you think she is. She changed over the past 10 years. But to be honest, I doubt you knew what she was really like to begin with. They stood together, waiting for her to leave, but Dorothy lingered to press the sight of them in her mind. She needed to remember what sparked the Civil War. She wanted to bring this to a good end. Finally, she dipped her head. Farewell then. The road back was long and empty, so Dorothy had plenty of time to consider things, contemplating a case that had never felt so hollow before. But if she ever tracked that woman down, would she be able to confront her the same way?